The arrival the US Colossus emerged from hyperspace like a mountain given wings. Admiral Marcus Kane stood on the bridge of humanity's first interstellar diplomatic vessel, watching the view screen fill with the sight of Nexus Station, the neutral meeting point chosen by the Zephyrian Confederation. The ancient space station, built from crystalline materials that caught and reflected starlight in beautiful patterns, had served as a diplomatic hub for 17 different species for over 2 millennia. What the Zephyrians hadn't expected was for humanity's idea of a diplomatic vessel to stretch 38 kilometers from bow to stern. High Counselor Vex High felt her triple hearts skip in synchronized terror as the massive human ship settled into position near the station. Her species had evolved from deep-sea creatures on their homeworld, and their instincts for detecting predators had served them well throughout their rise to become one of the galaxy's premier diplomatic powers. Every one of those instincts was now screaming danger. "Navigator King Tao," she whispered, her voice barely audible through the translation matrix. "Confirm the sensor readings." "That cannot be accurate." Quintel's tentacles trembled as he manipulated the holographic controls. His normally steady voice cracked as he spoke. "High Counselor, the human vessel measures 38.7 kilometers in length, 12.3 kilometers in width, and 8.9 kilometers in height. Mass approximately 200 billion metric tons. The ship appears to be constructed from an unknown metallic composite that our scanners cannot fully penetrate." The bridge of the Zephyrian command ship Silent Current fell into stunned silence. In the known galaxy, the largest diplomatic vessels rarely exceeded 500 meters in length. Even the mighty Chronari battle fleets, feared across 3 star systems, fielded warships that barely reached 2 kilometers at their largest. The humans had brought something that dwarfed entire space stations. "High Counselor, communications." Specialist Rixara called out, her voice steady despite the circumstances. "The human vessel is broadcasting on standard diplomatic frequencies. They're requesting permission to dock." Vex High composed herself, drawing on centuries of diplomatic training. "Open a channel." The view screen flickered and resolved into the image of a human male with graying hair and kind eyes. He wore a deep blue uniform with insignia that suggested high rank, and his bearing radiated confidence without aggression. When he spoke, his voice carried the calm authority of someone accustomed to command. "Greetings, representatives of the Zephyrian Confederation. I am Admiral Marcus Kane of the United Earth Space Force. I command the UES Colossus, and I bring greetings from the people of Earth. We come in peace, seeking dialogue and mutual understanding." Vex High forced herself to respond according to protocol, though her survival instincts were in full alarm. "Admiral Kane, I am High Counselor Vex High of the Zephyrian Confederation. We welcome you to Nexus Station. Your vessel's specifications are quite remarkable. We would be honored to proceed with first contact protocols." Kane's expression softened slightly. "Thank you, High Counselor. I understand our ship might seem imposing. We designed the Colossus to serve as both a diplomatic vessel and a mobile embassy. We believe that when meeting new civilizations, it's important to make a good first impression." The Zephyrian bridge crew exchanged glances. If this was humanity's idea of making a good first impression, what did their actual warships look like? Admiral Vex High continued, "Might I ask if this is a standard diplomatic vessel for your species?" Kane chuckled, a sound that somehow managed to be both reassuring and terrifying. "Oh no, High Counselor. The Colossus is actually one of our smaller diplomatic ships. We didn't want to seem aggressive, so we chose something modest for first contact. We left the really big ships back at Earth. Dr. Elena Buscus, humanities chief xenobiologist and diplomatic advisor, stepped into view beside Kane. She was a woman in her 40s with intelligent eyes and an easy smile. Hi, Counselor, if I may add. We've studied your species' psychological profiles based on the cultural data you've shared with other civilizations. We understand that large objects can be interpreted as threatening. We want to assure you that the Colossus is purely a peaceful vessel. Navigator Quintal's tentacles were now openly shaking. High Counselor, he whispered, if this is their small diplomatic ship, what do their actual warships look like? The question hung in the air like a dark cloud. Vex-High had been wondering the same thing, but diplomatic protocol demanded she maintain composure. Admiral Kane, Dr. Vasquez, we appreciate your peaceful intentions. However, I must ask, what kind of power systems does your vessel employ? Our sensors are detecting energy signatures that are ... unprecedented. Kane nodded understandingly. We use controlled fusion reactors, High Counselor. Nothing too exotic. Each reactor core is about the size of a small city block, and we run 16 of them in parallel. Our engineers tell me it's relatively straightforward physics, though I confess the technical details are beyond me. The Zephyrian crew sat in stunned silence. Each of the human reactors was larger than their entire ship. The energy output required to power such a massive vessel was beyond their comprehension. Admiral Vex-High managed, how does your species manufacture vessels of such magnitude? Dr. Vasquez smiled warmly. That's actually a fascinating aspect of human culture, High Counselor. We have a saying, go big or go home. Throughout our history, whenever we've encountered a challenge, our tendency has been to build bigger, stronger, more impressive solutions. When we decided to reach for the stars, we didn't just want to travel between them. We wanted to bring a piece of home with us. Kane gestured toward the view screen, where technical displays showed the Colossus in all its massive glory. The Colossus isn't just a ship, High Counselor. It's a mobile city. We have residential quarters for 10,000 diplomats, scientists, and crew members. We have manufacturing facilities, research laboratories, recreational areas, and even parks with trees from Earth. When we go exploring, we bring our entire civilization with us. The implications were staggering. If humanity could build mobile cities and casually send them across the galaxy, what was their total industrial capacity? What was their population? How many worlds did they control? High Counselor, Communications Specialist Rixara called out urgently. I'm detecting additional ships emerging from hyperspace. The view screen split to show 3 more vessels materializing near the Colossus. Each was roughly half the size of the main ship, but still massive by galactic standards. Their designs were sleek and purposeful, clearly military in nature despite their diplomatic mission. Ah, Kane said casually, those are my escort vessels. The UES Determination, the UES Perseverance, and the UES Innovation. We brought them along just in case we encountered any hostile forces during our journey. Can't be too careful in unexplored space. Vex-High felt her respiratory system struggle to process the information. The humans had brought 4 impossibly large ships too. Their first contact meeting. The escort vessels alone could probably conquer entire star systems. Admiral, she said carefully, these escort vessels, are they typical of your military forces? Kane exchanged a glance with Dr. Vasquez. High Counselor, these are actually from our exploration fleet, not our military. They're designed for long-range missions and equipped with defensive systems. Our actual military vessels are, well, they're built for different purposes. The bridge of the silent current erupted in whispered conversations as the crew tried to process this information. If these weren't even military vessels, what did humanity's actual navy look like? Dr. Vasquez leaned forward slightly. High Counselor, I can see that our ships are causing some concern. Please understand that humans have always been builders. When we set out to explore the galaxy, we brought our construction philosophy with us. We believe that if something is worth doing, it's worth doing on a grand scale. Navigator Quintal found his voice. Dr. Vasquez, if I may ask, how many ships like these does your species possess? Kane answered with characteristic honesty. The Colossus is one of 12 diplomatic vessels in our deep space exploration fleet. We have 57 ships in our merchant marine, about 300 in our system defense forces, and our main fleet numbers in the thousands. Most of our ships are much smaller than the Colossus, of course. We only use the big ones for special occasions. The numbers were incomprehensible. Humanity possessed thousands of ships, many of them larger than anything the Zephyrians had ever imagined. Yet they spoke of peace and cooperation. High Counselor, came an urgent whisper from Science Officer Talvin. The power signatures from their escort vessels suggest they could each destroy our entire fleet. And they're calling them defensive ships. Vex High closed her eyes and tried to compose herself. She had conducted first contact with dozens of species throughout her long career, but nothing had prepared her for this. Humanity wasn't just another spacefaring civilization. They were something entirely unprecedented. Admiral Kane, she said finally, I believe we need to convene an emergency session of the Void Council. The implications of first contact with humanity are ... significant. Kane nodded gravely. We understand, High Counselor. We've found that most species need some time to process our approach to space travel. We are prepared to answer any questions the Council might have. As the communication channel closed, Vex High turned to her crew. Send immediate word to all member species of the Confederation. Tell them we've encountered something unprecedented. A species that builds cities to sail between the stars and calls them diplomatic vessels. The message that went out that day would change the course of galactic history. Humanity had arrived, and they had done so in the most human way possible, by building something impossibly large and filling it with hope for the future. Asterisk, the revelation, the emergency session of the Void Council, convened within hours of humanity's arrival. Representatives from 17 different species gathered in the great amphitheater aboard Nexus Station, their forms ranging from the crystalline Silthri to the gas-form Etherians. The air hummed with translation matrices working overtime as dozens of languages merged into a cacophony of concern and curiosity. Captain Sarah Chen stood beside Admiral Kane on the speaker's platform, her engineering uniform pristine despite the long journey from Earth. She was one of humanity's foremost experts in large-scale construction and had been specifically chosen for this mission to explain humanity's approach to space travel. Her calm demeanor contrasted sharply with the agitated murmurs filling the chamber. Arch-scientist Moldak of the Chronari Empire leaned forward in his hoverchair, his 6 arms gesticulating wildly as he spoke. The energy readings are impossible. No known civilization has ever harnessed such power sources for mere transportation. These humans must be using weapons technology for their ships. Commander Torres, humanity's military strategist, stepped forward with a patient expression. Honored representatives, I can assure you that the UES Colossus is not a weapon, it's a home. Every system aboard our ship is designed to support life, foster learning, and promote peaceful exploration. Emissary Krilthan of the Nexari Collective, whose species had been spacefaring for over 3,000 years, raised a translucent appendage. Commander Torres, we've analyzed your vessels. Structural integrity, the materials you're using, the power distribution systems, the sheer scale of construction. It suggests an industrial capacity that exceeds our entire Confederation combined. How is this possible? Captain Chen smiled and activated a holographic display that showed the construction process of the Colossus. Emissary Krilthan, the answer lies in human philosophy. When we decided to reach for the stars, we didn't just want to visit them, we wanted to bring our entire civilization with us. The Colossus took 47 years to build, involved the resources of 12 worlds, and required the combined efforts of over 2 million workers. The hologram showed massive construction bays in Earth's orbit, with thousands of smaller ships ferrying materials and workers. The scale was breathtaking, entire asteroids being processed into hull plating. Fusion reactors, the size of skyscrapers, being assembled in zero gravity, and modular city sections being fitted together like pieces of an enormous puzzle. But why? Asked Representative Zinthara of the melodic concordance, her crystalline form chiming with confused harmonics. Why build something so large when smaller vessels could achieve the same purpose? Dr. Vasquez, who had joined the delegation, stepped forward. Representative Zinthara, it's about our fundamental nature as a species. Humans are social creatures who thrive in communities. When we go exploring, we don't just send scientists and diplomats. We send families, artists, teachers, children. The Colossus isn't just a ship. It's a city that happens to travel between stars. The hologram shifted to show the interior of the Colossus. Vast atriums filled with earth plants stretched for kilometers, residential districts with tree-lined streets housed thousands of families, and children could be seen playing in parks that existed in the heart of space. Schools, hospitals, theaters, and research facilities created a complete ecosystem of human civilization. Arch-scientist Moldak's expression shifted from suspicion to wonder. You've created a world that travels between worlds. Exactly, Captain. Chen confirmed. Every human ship is designed to be self-sufficient for decades or even centuries. We don't just visit other civilizations. We bring our entire culture to share with them. Art, music, literature, cuisine, games, and most importantly, our children's laughter. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. This wasn't just advanced technology, it was an entirely different philosophy of existence. High Counselor Vexhai, who had been observing quietly, spoke up. Admiral Kane, you mentioned that you have thousands of ships. Are they all built to this scale? Kane nodded. Not all, High Counselor. We have different classes of vessels for different purposes. Our exploration ships, like the Colossus, are the largest because they need to support entire communities for long periods. Our merchant vessels are smaller, usually only 15 to 20 kilometers long, because they're designed for efficiency. Our system defense ships are built for speed and maneuverability, so they're typically only 5 to 10 kilometers in length. Asterisk, the casual mention of 5-kilometer ships as small sent another wave of shock through the assembly. Representative Kixmore of the Shifting Sands Coalition made a sound that the translators couldn't process. And your military? Asked Emissary Krilthan, though his voice suggested he wasn't sure he wanted to know the answer. Commander Torres stepped. forward with a serious expression. Our military philosophy is different from what you might expect. We don't build ships to conquer or destroy. We build them to protect and deter. Our largest military vessels are the Leviathan-class defenders, which measure about 50 kilometers in length, but they're designed as mobile fortresses, not attack ships. The number 50 kilometers hung in the air like a physical weight. Even the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy had never conceived of military vessels on such a scale. "How do you power such ships?" asked Science Officer Talvin, who had been granted permission to speak at the emergency session. Captain Chen's eyes lit up with enthusiasm. "That's actually one of our proudest achievements. We use controlled microsingularities as our primary power source. Each Leviathan-class ship contains 5 artificial black holes, each about the size of a marble, held in perfect suspension by electromagnetic fields. The energy output is clean, efficient, and virtually unlimited." The casual mention of weaponized black holes sent several representatives into what could only be described as panic. The Etherian delegate began to phase in and out of visibility, while the Silthri representative's crystalline form started resonating at frequencies that made the entire chamber vibrate. "Please," Dr. Vasquez said quickly, "I understand this is overwhelming, but I want to emphasize that these are not weapons. They're tools for exploration and protection. In the 300 years since we've been using this technology, we've never once turned it against another species. Because you've never met another species before today," pointed out Representative Zinthara, her chimes now distinctly anxious. "That's true," Admiral Kane admitted. "But we've had plenty of conflicts among ourselves throughout our history. We've learned that building bigger weapons doesn't solve problems. Building better communities does. That's why our largest ships are designed to create and sustain life, not destroy it." Arch-scientist Moldark had been studying the technical displays with growing amazement. "Captain Chen, your construction techniques, your materials science, your power generation, it's all centuries ahead of anything we've developed. How long has your species been spacefaring?" "About 400 years, Chen replied. "We started with chemical rockets and worked our way up. Every breakthrough led to bigger and better ships. It's just how we approach problems. If something works, we make it bigger and better." The timeline was staggering. In 4 centuries, humanity had gone from primitive chemical rockets to ships that could serve as mobile worlds. Most species took millennia to achieve what humans had accomplished. In less than half that time, "What are your intentions?" asked High Counselor Vexai, cutting to the heart of the matter. "With such capabilities, you could dominate the entire galaxy." Kane's expression became earnest. "High Counselor, we didn't come here to dominate anyone. We came here to learn, to share, and to grow. Yes, we build big ships, but we fill them with teachers, doctors, artists, and families. We want to add our voice to the galactic community, not silence the voices that are already here." Dr. Vasquez stepped forward. "Every species we've studied has something unique to offer. Your music, your art, your ways of seeing the universe. These are treasures that can't be conquered or stolen. They can only be shared willingly. That's what we're hoping for." Emissary Krilthan leaned back in his chair, his expression thoughtful. "You speak of sharing, but what do you need from us? With such technology, surely you must be entirely self-sufficient." "Knowledge," Kane replied immediately. "We may build big ships, but we're still young as a species. We have so much to learn about the universe, about other forms of life, about different ways of thinking and being. Our ships may be large, but our perspective is still limited by our own experience. The session continued for hours, with representatives asking detailed questions about human technology, culture, and intentions. Slowly, the initial fear began to give way to curiosity and even excitement. The humans weren't conquerors, they were enthusiastic neighbors who happened to have built very large houses. As the session concluded, High Counselor Vex-High made an announcement that would echo through galactic history. Representatives of the Void Council. After extensive discussion, I propose that we welcome humanity into our confederation, not as subjects or conquerors, but as partners. Their strength could protect us all, and their enthusiasm could inspire us to reach for achievements we never thought possible. The vote was unanimous. As the delegates dispersed, Captain Chen found herself surrounded by scientists eager to learn about human construction techniques. Commander Torres was deep in conversation with military strategists about new approaches to peacekeeping. Dr. Vasquez was sharing stories about Earth's children with representatives who had never seen young beings play among the stars. Admiral Kane stood at the observation deck of Nexus Station, watching the Colossus hang majestically in space. Soon, it would be joined by other human ships, bringing teachers and students, artists and engineers, families and friends to this corner of the galaxy. Humanity had arrived, and they had done so in the most human way possible, by building something impossibly large and filling it with hope for the future. The galaxy would never be the same. Continue. Would you like to continue this story and explore humanity's integration into galactic civilization? Type yes or continue to see what happens next.